Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Lady Black Kaleidoscope Project. Yay! I'm so excited. I'm still on the Kamala high, so just go with me here. But today is another great day because it's International Left-Handers Day. August 13th, baby. And yours truly is a lefty. Yeah. And I got some good company, let me tell you. Got Barack Obama, I got Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, Goldie Hawn, Kate Hudson, Paul Simon, Lady Gaga, I think David Bowie. I mean, there's just so many amazing people because the left is right. And this is our superpower. Because let me tell you why it's a superpower. Because we have this trait has survived for 500,000 years. I mean, that's pretty badass, if I say so myself. I was thinking about trying to just use my left hand for everything today, for this video, but I was just like, man. But anyway, I just want to give a little, shout out to all the lefties out there. What? I'm sorry. I'm very proud about being left-handed because you know what? We have to deal with living in a right-handed world. You right-handers take a lot for granted. But it's pretty awesome being left-handed, I gotta say, because our right brain, we're really right brain dominant because that controls all the creative stuff. That's why you see a lot of creative, artistic people left-handed. And plus, it gives you advantages for sports like baseball and boxing and stuff. Anyway, so today we're in the home stretch of my grade 8 against hate. Oh my god, grade 8 against hate. I'm just gonna be loopy like I was yesterday. But just so basically, if this is your first time coming to this channel, so my grade 8 against hate is basically my 8 essentials that all happen to start with the letter C, because okay, and they are all essentials in becoming truly anti-racist and anti-bias. So they are courage, commitment, consciousness, curiosity, compassion, conversation, creativity, and community. And today we're going to talk about talking. Conversation. Gabby, gab. Gab, 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 gab. I just cracked my neck. Anyway. So, what is conversation? We got our trusty dictionary thesaurus. I'm going to find out what conversation is. Conversation. It's one of my favorite things to do. I love talking. And it's kind of funny because I didn't talk all the time. But that's another story for another day. But we're going to talk about what conversation is. Okay. Conversation. It's a noun, and it means an informal talking together. And here are some synonyms for conversation. Colloquy, dialogue, discourse, discussion, exchange, also banter. One of my favorite things to do is banter. Oh my god, if you want to be like my friend, you gotta banter. You gotta hold your own. Anyway. Crossfire, which was a show on CNN, which was anyway. But Crossfire. Give and take, repartee, fringe. Conference, parley, powwow, babble, which I do all the time. Chat, chatter, chit-chat, gabfest. Gossip, palaver. Ooh, palaver, that sounds nice. Prattle, rap. Small talk, table talk, symposium, debate, deliberation. I think this is my favorite synonym thesaurus thing for all these words thus far. I love this. I'm sorry. I'm an Aquarius. I'm a double Aquarius. Sun, my moon in Aquarius. I'm an air sign. We're the sign of community. Air signs are all about communication. So this is I'm really excited about this conversation. So just go with it. Just go with me here. Because basically what I'm doing is talking to you guys. I'm just talking to myself, but, It's fun. I hope you like it. Anyway, so about conversation. One good conversation can shift the direction of change forever. Linda Lambert. Yes, it really can, especially talking about things having to do with what is going on right now and the whole premise of this entire grade against hate, which is about bias and prejudice and all the isms and the phobias. So having one really good, honest, open conversation really can change things. And conversations are, they're informal things as they are, and they can be serious, but they can be serious and fun and everywhere in between. But when you're talking about the isms, you're talking about racism, sexism, classism, all of those relationships, or those biases, these conversations can really change things. I mean, this is once you get these things back, it's important with this to, you've done the work. All these kind of the first 5 kind of lead up to conversation, particularly consciousness, curiosity, and compassion. It's really important to have done that kind of work, the inner work, and bring that to the conversation, because you're going to need all these things in the conversation. When you're talking about these things, this most likely will be, depending on the conversation, if it's within your own race. If we're talking about racism, and because of the moment we're talking about anti-racist, anti-bias. So if you're talking about anti-racism, it's like having conversations with people of your own race and having conversations with people of different races. And if you're multiracial, then that's a really interesting conversation to have with the different sides of your family and your parents and all that stuff. But talking to people of your own race, and it's going to be different than talking to people of other race. And then also talking, and especially like for me, like talking to other people of color is a different conversation than talking to people who are black, which is different than talking to people who are white. So, but conversations with people of color, you get to see a lot of similarities. Oh, you're going through that too. Because I remember when I was in college, one time I lived my junior year, I lived with 2 amazing Indian girls. One's a doctor, one's a dentist. That's what they are now at Barnard. And one time I was talking to one of my friends who's the dentist, and I was just like, we were just talking, and she was saying something about white people. I was like, you too? I thought I was the only person. Like, black people, we talk about this thing all the time. It was just this, I forget what it was. And so it was nice to kind of be like, oh, you've gone through that too with dealing with discrimination and prejudice. So that was kind of nice. And now white people, I know there are friends of mine who are starting to have these conversations about race with their relatives and their friends. And it's not the easiest conversation because this has not been talked about. And this is such a hot topic issue, talking about race, talking about prejudice, talking about bias. This is not the easiest topic for black people and other people of color. We've been talking about this forever because this is our lived experience. We've gone through the bias and the prejudice and the racism and the sexism. We've gone through these things, particularly with race. We've gone through this. We live this every day. So we don't talk about it all the time, but it is a big part of our conversation because we get to see the effects of racism on every level, on the macro level, on the meso level, and on the micro level. So for us, this is like, we talk about this. Like my family, we talk about race all the time. I mean, part of the reason why I majored in sociology in college was because of those conversations that we're constantly having in my house. Does every household talk about race in as intensely as my household? Probably not. But I know we do talk about it when I get with my cousins or I get with other people. We do talk about things having to do with race. So it's important to know that. But with white people having these conversations, it's not the easiest. And then what I'm really interested in is when we all come together, when it's an interracial conversation, when it's an intercultural conversation. How is that? There's a master's at Penn, University of Pennsylvania, called intercultural communication. So that's, if we're going to really solve these biases and solve these problems, we have to sit at the table, preferably with food, because everything's always better with food. I mean, let's be real. I mean, I told my mom, like, give me a good conversation, a good meal, and a good nap. I'm good. Solid. It doesn't take that much to be happy. One of my favorite things is to chat and chew. Also to walk and chat too. I love walking and talking. I love everything with conversation. This is like my thing. This is my thing. Anyway, so it's important. So when you're coming together, it's important to come with, consciousness and curiosity and compassion, and courage and commitment is all, and and the last two that I'm going to talk about, creativity and community. Now I'm going to talk about that in the next 2 days, next 2 episodes. So it's important to come to these conversations with that, and hopefully the conversation is not just, it's a means and an end, particularly when it comes to interracial, intercultural conversation. It's a means and an end. So it's a means because it helps each of you, if it's a black person and a white person, for example, it helps each of you in your own racial development, your racial identity development. It helps you in that way. But it's also an end because you're coming together to talk about things and resolve things, especially if it's something like on a real big level, when it comes to policy, and you're talking, like, people of different backgrounds are coming together and trying to achieve an end, which is good policy, fair policy. And then so conversation is where that, the negotiation, all that stuff, that's an end in itself. Conversation. And just having conversations. So it's a means and an end at the same time. It's kind of weird. Maybe it's not, I don't know, but I just kind of thought of that. I was like, I never thought of it that way, but now, talking gets you thinking, and even just talking to you guys on this camera is getting me thinking. So that's the great thing about conversation, is that it gets the wheels start turning and things are happening. So it's important to have those conversations and stuff. But it's hard. But you got to enter it with humility and honesty and all that stuff. So, one of the most important parts of conversation is listening. So, here's a quote about that. And I got a little creative because I didn't write all the quotes, so go with me here. We're letting it all hang out on the Lady Black Kaleidoscope project. If you make listening and observation your occupation, so if you make that your occupation, you will gain much more than you can by talk. Robert Badentow. So, woo. It looks kind of like Halloween because it's like black and orange, because I'm just weird like that. Anyway. So, big part of communication is listening, particularly when you're having these intense, hopefully, tough conversations, because you're talking about these are tough issues, talking about the isms and phobias and biases and stuff. This is a tough conversation. So anytime you're going to have a tough conversation, a serious conversation, and in any conversation period, you need to practice active listening. I learned the concept of active listening when I did City Year, when we were constantly giving each other and having to receive feedback in group, in our team, on our team. And I was introduced to this concept because I was just like, listen, but you really practice active listening. Active listening is just basically what it is, being active in listening. So, really being focused on what the person is saying, taking it in, really kind of understanding it, being mindful, being conscious, not letting anything else distract you, really doing it. So it's really being active, not just like, I'm just going to sit here and listen, blah, 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 let go one ear out the other, but really be invested in what the person has to say and really being that. And we should all practice in every conversation that we have, not just serious conversations, but in fun conversations. It's good to just really be there and be present, because you really, even when it's with a friend, you really feel loved, because you feel like you're being heard and you're being listened to. And that's what we all want. We want to be heard and we want to be listened to. But in order to do that, we have to do it ourselves. We have to listen to other people, because there's so much you can learn from them. Okay. So here's some tips that I got from positivepsychology.com, a website. Here we go. Active listening tips. Nonverbal involvement. That's number one. So that means just being aware of your own body language, but also mainly being aware of the other person's body language. Are they squirming? Are they smiling? Are they whatever? I mean, because nonverbal communication is just as strong, and in some ways stronger and more potent than verbal communication. So it's really important to be aware of non-verbal stuff, and especially if it's a situation where it's about feedback and you're getting feedback, be aware of what everybody is doing non-verbally, what you're doing and what they're doing. It's really important. Number 2, pay attention to the speaker, not your own thoughts. Probably one of the hardest things to do, especially if you're like me and you're a talker, because a lot of times you are just waiting for you to say something. I've learned to really learn to listen, and I've has been a skill that I've definitely over the last 15 years since I graduated college that I've had to really learn. Just through life, I have had to learn, just to learn to listen, to really listen, and not just wait. Just it's not just a soliloquy. You have to listen to other people, and you have to really do that. And pay attention to what they're saying. You don't want to have a divided attention. You need to be fully invested in what that person is saying. Number 3, practice non-judgment. Yes, especially when it comes to feedback. People are going to say things that you might not like. Especially if you're having an open, honest discussion, you're going to disagree. It's inevitable. So it's important to practice non-judgment and be able to. I think this cat is trying to say something outside. He has something to contribute to it. So it's important to practice non-judgment and really be. You should enter every conversation with non-judgment, because people are going to say things that you probably will not agree with, and it's important to not judge that person, because then as soon as a person feels like you're judging them, they're going to shut down. And so you need to really be aware of that, and that can also come through body language. You can show judgment through your body language. So be aware of that. So just being mindful of that, and being mindful of that person. You both are coming in because, especially if it's a close relationship, you're having a conversation. You care about each other. You love each other. And if it's a formal situation, I mean, you have a goal. You want to get something done. You want to accomplish something. So, and the conversation is the means and hopefully the end itself in some ways. So it's important to do that. Number 4, tolerate silence. Another hard thing for me to do. I'm a talker. But silence is also, is a mode of communication. Sometimes you need silence. Okay, I couldn't keep my mouth shut for that long. But it's important to have that, because sometimes you have to ride uncomfortable silences, especially if you're talking about something that really hits a nerve, or just to give you time to breathe and process with what you have to say, with what you're saying and what the other person is saying. Sometimes you just need to pause and take a breath. And silence can definitely has its place in a really good conversation. Number 5, paraphrase. So paraphrase meaning so when someone says something and you don't understand it, just be like, so you're saying this? Because you might be hearing, a person might be saying something and another person might be interpreting it in a different way. Like someone might be saying something to you and you don't understand it, or you think you want to clarify what it's saying, so you make sure that person's point is getting across to you. So paraphrase, being like, oh, so are you saying this? So you're saying this, or whatever. And then number 6, ask questions. It's always important to ask questions. Ask those probing questions for clarification, for just to make conversation. You know, oh, so you say this. Well, what about this? And da, 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 you know. I mean, sometimes some people would feel like, well, I shouldn't have to know how to do this because we talk all the time, and I don't need these tips. You can always learn how to communicate better. Everybody can benefit from learning how to communicate better because it's something that you can apply to so many areas of life. So many people, so many romantic relationships break up because of the lack of communication. So you can always learn more about communication. No one is a perfect communicator because there are no perfect people here. I am not a perfect communicator, you know, but I've grown over the years. You know, really, you know, I'll never forget what something someone said to me. Is like, Tracy, just like make your points clear. So sometimes that's why I write things down and I use these things because it guides me. You know, it makes me ramble less because I used to ramble all the time because I didn't have any kind of focus. So by having these, you know, these cards, it gives me an outline, and you know, and I learned that because I took a public speaking class. Everyone, if you can, take a public speaking class, whether it's online, whether if you're go to school, whatever. I highly, highly recommend it. I took a public speaking course in college, and I'm someone who came from a theater background. So I thought, oh, you know, I don't need this. No, I did. It was really good to really kind of get critiqued and help me grow. So everyone should take a public speaking class. It's definitely beneficial. The first ingredient in conversation is truth. The next, good sense. The third, good humor. And the fourth, wit. William Temple. That's the perfect ingredients for conversation. You need to have that. And I think it's important in conversations, especially in serious conversations. For me, I need to have a little bit of humor. I need to have some wit, you know? And, you know, but not every, and but that's also something that's important for me to realize because sometimes it's not the right time. There's always a time and place for humor and wit, especially when you're talking about these serious, heavy topics. Might not always be the best time to do that, especially if you're someone like me who is always trying to crack a joke or say a funny line or whatever. It's not always the right situation to do that. But in those formal conversations, but in informal conversations, yeah, absolutely. Humor and wit, if that's a part of your personality, do it. I use it all the time. It's, you know, I think that's part of the reason why people like to talk to me because I use humor and wit. I hope that's why you like watching this show because I use humor and wit in my own wacky way. So it's important to do that, and it's important. I mean, for me, it's just my way of life is like try to not take things so seriously. Sometimes you have to take things seriously. There's a time and place for that, but it's hard. It's you know, when I've always heard this when it comes to problems, it's always like it's you. It's not you versus, like, when it comes to relationships. It's not like you versus your partner. It's you and your partner versus the problem. So, you know, use your strengths as individuals and as a partnership and combat that with the problem, which you probably are going to have to talk out. And I think that's a good way to approach these tough conversations. It's not you and the person against each other knocking heads. It's like the problem is this. The problem is racism. The problem is that, and then you two are going to work together against the problem and using conversation as a means of talking about it. So I think that's a good way of doing that. So I just think it's always important to, you know, come in things with a sense of like you're working together to solve this problem through conversation. So a good example of that is when it comes to interracial conversation and interracial friendship, because conversation to me is the key ingredient of any relationship. I think friendship is just, or any relationship is just one long conversation. It's like a series of little conversations that make up one big long conversation. So that's how I view friendship. I don't know. That's just me and my talky self. Talkative Tracy. That's what I did for an alliteration exercise. What are you? Talkative Tracy. And then I was like, no, I'm not just talkative. I'll say tenacious. But I am tenacious and talkative. Left-handers day. Woo, woo, woo. Just a little shout out for that. I'm sorry. So an example of this is this wonderful podcast that I just discovered called Call Your Girlfriend podcast. It's hosted by Aminatou So and Friedman, and they also just wrote a book called Big Friendship: How We Keep Each Other Close. So Aminatou is a black woman. I think they're in the like they seem like they're around my age. Maybe they're in their 30s, early 30s. I don't think they're millennials, definitely. So they're young adults. So Aminatou is a black woman who lives in Brooklyn, and her bestie is Ann Friedman, who lives in LA. And they're both like writers and journalists, and they started this podcast in 2014. So I just came on the wagon. I've heard of it before, like vaguely, but I read this article in New York Magazine, which gave an excerpt from their book Big Friendship, and I was like, wow, this is like amazing. This is really good, because I've been thinking so much about interracial friendships and how to have these conversations talking about race and being, because a lot of my white friends are kind of like, they were like that and I was always the person that brought it up, because I was like, I want to talk about race because I talk about race all the time. If you're going to be friends with me, if you're going to have me in my life, I'm going to talk to you about race. I'm going to talk about class. I'm going to talk about these things because I live these things. But for some of my friends in the past, they just couldn't handle it. It was too much. So they stopped talking to me, which was sad. But, I'm going to live my truth. And this is part of being friends with me. And that was part of one of the things that I said was, and I've said this to a few of my friends, like, I'm going to speak my truth, and I'm going to stand in my truth. And if you can't handle that, then maybe we shouldn't be friends. But it shouldn't be like that. So hopefully, with George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter protests that have been happening, and Corona and all that stuff has been forcing white people to deal with stuff. So hopefully they want to have more of these conversations, these real conversations, and I think it makes it a richer friendship, and I think they have a rich friendship. So it's a weekly podcast. Check it out. They talk about pop culture and politics and race and all that stuff. And so it's good to just see, besties. They're long distance besties, and they just talk about stuff about pop culture and politics. I mean, I've done that with some of my friends. So I should have my own podcast with my friends. But they took the idea, so I'm not going to take it from them. This is their thing, and it's awesome. So they came up with this also awesome theory called Shine Theory. Both Aminatou and Ann. There we go. Shine Theory. I'm going to tell you what it is. Shine Theory is an investment over the long term in helping someone be their best self and relying on their help in return. It is a conscious decision to bring your full self to your friendships, to not let insecurity or envy ravage them. Shine Theory is a commitment to asking, will we be better as collaborators than as competitors? The answer is almost always yes. People know you by the company you keep. Shine Theory is about recognizing that true confidence is infectious. And if someone is tearing you down or targeting you as competition, it's often because they are lacking in confidence or support themselves. It is a practice of cultivating a spirit of genuine happiness and excitement when your friends are doing well and being there for them when they aren't. Don't mistake this for networking. Shine Theory is not about trying to help someone you meet along the way in your career, because if you're doing it right, it's simply not possible to invest deeply in that many people. True. There are only so many hours and so many email replies in a given day. Shine Theory is intentional, it is accountable, it is personal. And they said that they have been practicing it privately since at least 2010 and speaking about it publicly since 2013. This is their theory. This is not my theory. This is their theory. Aminatou and Ann, the girls who did that. I think it's a great theory. When I read it, I was like, wow, this is like really lovely and, gives you all the feels. And, like my pineapples. I don't know. That's not even relevant. I don't know. I'm still wacky because of Kamala, so just go with me. I think it's great. I think it's a great theory. I think it's good for conversations, just to, like being conscious and bringing your full self to those conversations, including you're going to have biases and you're going to have stuff that you're dealing with. And being open about that and being honest with it. There's probably going to be a lot of laughter and there's going to be some tears, especially if it's a close friend or family member. And it's a continuous conversation. I don't think when you're talking about race and all these biases and all these things, it's not just a one-time conversation. It's a continual conversation. So you're going to have some really productive conversations and you might have some not productive conversations. But it's important to keep on talking. Keep on having these conversations. This is a process, as I've said about all of these 8 C's. It's all about it. The Great 8 Against Hate is a process. These are things that you have to have patience and you have to stick with it because it's worth it. It's worth it. It makes your life richer. It makes your life fuller. You're more authentic. You are standing in your truth. And that's ultimately the way to live your best life. Live your best life, lefties. Live your best life today and every day. So finally, I'm going to stop rambling, and I'm going to read you a poem that I always read a poem. So it's called Generous Listening by Marilyn Nelson, and it was inspired by the On Being Gathering in 2018. So here we go. A conversation can be a contest or a game of catch with invisible balloons. They bounce between us, growing and shrinking. Sometimes floating like cloud medicine balls, and sometimes bowling at us like random round anvils. You toss a phrase, and understanding blooms like an anemone, anemone of colored lights. My mind fireworks with unasked questions. Who is this miracle speaking to me? Who is this miracle listening? And what amazingness are we creating? Out of gray matter, a star spark of thought leaps between synapses into the air and pours through gray matter into my heart. Now, how can I not listen generously? It's beautiful. Communication is so much. It will change the world. Having a good conversation, like I said, like that quote said earlier, it can change you forever. And it's really the foundation of any good relationship, any good partnership, just anything good in the world is communication. We are humans. We are social beings. We need to have communication with each other. And it's the way that we'll get better and things will get better. We need to talk to each other and being conscious, being curious, being compassionate, being courageous, being committed, all the 5 that I've before that. And then the conversation can lead to creativity, can lead to community. So I think conversation is the thing that it's ultimately, I think, is the crux of the thing, of the Great 8 is conversation. Because before that, it's the 5, and then the last 2. Through conversation, you can have creativity, you can have community. At least that's what I think. This thing is a living document. It's growing, but this is at least what I think right now. So, have those conversations. Be honest, be open, be compassionate. It's hard. And be patient with each other and really listen. Really, really listen. Really take it in. A lot of times when I have a conversation, after a conversation, I will take a step back and process the conversation. And really think about, what did I say right? What did I say wrong? Evaluate yourself after each conversation, particularly conversations that have to do with the isms or any serious conversation. Really take a step back and be like, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? And then, and take that feedback that you give yourself and critical feedback and apply that to yourself and your own learning and future conversations and just things in life. Okay? So remember, keep on keeping on, live out loud, and embrace your kaleidoscope soul. Happy Left-Handers Day, everyone!